white oak pastures is an anomaly, right? It's contrary to what the industrial farmers want you to do, or the industrial farming wants you to do. And so now you've set yourself apart as this organic farm. It seems like things have gotten in reverse, because really what you're doing is what all the farmers should be doing. But I guess we've gotten away from that completely.
We have, and there are some reasons for the situation you described is accurate, and there's some reasons for it. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but the fact is there are a lot of mega corporations making a lot of money feeding the earth, feeding the people of the earth. And what I do changes that whole dynamic. And it doesn't lend itself to really large corporate venues. We're probably about as big as we need to be. But there should be a lot more of us.
Yes.
But I don't know if there will be or not, because it's very difficult. The economics is very different from what you learn in college. It's the economically we do business on a monthly report, a quarterly report, an annual report, and we measure the return for those very brief time periods. What we do here is very long term. It's very generational. And when you start trying to apply modern economics to it, it just doesn't look very good.
Right.
I'm perfectly fine with it, but it doesn't look very good. Investors wouldn't want any part of it.
Yeah, I could see that. And so why don't you walk us through a little bit about your history? Because I read your profile, and here you are a fourth generation cattleman. You went to school in University of Georgia School of Agriculture. You were trained in the industrial farming method, as your father was, and then you decided to change all that. So tell us a little bit about your story and what motivated you to make that change.
Well, and by the way, everything you said is accurate. And I was 20 years into it before I decided to make the change. I operated the farm as a modern industrial monocultural cattle operation for 20 years before I changed my mind. As you pointed out, my great-grandfather started this farm in 1866, followed by his son, and they ran it as a food system because that's the way it worked. They were blessed. They had a nice sized farm and employees. And the farm was 2 miles from the little town of Bluffton, Georgia. And every day they would, 6 days a week, they would slaughter something, a cow or some hogs or some chickens or whatever, and load it on a mule-drawn wagon and bring it to Bluffton and sell it. You understand, this is before refrigeration and before USDA inspection. So it was by definition a very local food system. And it worked, and they operated it for a couple of generations. My dad took over the farm in post-World War II, 1945. And that's when things really changed. And my dad was a very progressive, aggressive guy. And he changed with it, and it became a fairly large monocultural cattle operation. No species but cattle. And my dad ran it that way all his life. And I think he enjoyed the fact that he was a specialist. He went from being, his dad, a generalist, raising a lot of different species, to dad being a specialist. He was good at it. All I ever wanted to do was do what my dad did, run this farm as an industrial monocultural cattle operation. I went to the University of Georgia, majored in animal science, came home and did. I ran it as a very monocultural industrial cattle operation for 20 years and made money every year. We were profitable. But I did decide to make the change in the mid-90s and did so, and had some rough years as a result of that. But now I'm very glad I did.
And what was the difference? I mean, I know that in the industrial system, they use hormone implants, they feed their cows primarily unnatural things like grain. And I don't understand. I guess their hormones make them bigger and the grain makes them fatter, but they also feed them things like soy. I was reading that on your website that they feed these animals soy, which seems so unnatural and unhealthy to feed an animal something that it's not meant for them, right?
Well, the entire cattle feeding industry is unnatural. Cattle are meant to eat forage. They're not meant to eat grain. Cattle have ruminants. They have 4 sections to their stomach,
Right.
as do sheep, as do goats, as do some other species. They can break down cellulose, and they are meant to graze. And they're not meant to eat a grain diet. In fact, grain diets don't digest well for them. They gain a lot of weight. They become unnaturally obese creatures, but they don't digest it well. And that's why people use ionophores and hormones and subtherapeutic antibiotics to make all that work. And it does work. It puts weight on cattle very cheaply. It turns them into unnaturally obese creatures that you would not find in any sort of natural setting. And the meat is soft, and we like tender meat, so it has a place,
Gotcha.
So, and I occupied that place for 20 years, but I chose not to do it anymore. And I'm really not individually critical of people who raise cattle the way I used to. I don't think it's what we should be doing, and it's not what I do. But I don't put myself in the position of being judgmental of what other people do.
Right. So what got you to make that change? Because again, it's generational. You went to school, you learned how to do this. So what got you to change?
I think this isn't very flattering, but I think that because I was such an extreme person, I saw the fallacies of that system. I was if the label instruction said to give the animal 2 cc's per 100 pounds of body weight, I'd probably start out at 3 and maybe go to 4 cc. And if the label rate said put out a pint of the pesticide per acre, I might put a quart. So I was not more insightful than others. I was just sort of an abuser. And as a result, I saw the negative unintended consequences of the system I was part of. And it caused me to not like it as well. I saw the unintended consequences, and I wanted to move away from them, and I did. And to be honest further, it was harder than I thought. I thought, I don't like doing that. I'm not going to do it anymore.
Right.
But economically, it was more difficult than I had budgeted, if I had a budget.
Sure. Well, what's the old saying? It's going to take you longer and cost more than what you thought. That's always the rule of thumb, right?
It certainly applied to me. Absolutely.
All right, and I want to back up a little bit because something you said just kind of hit my thought there, my mind. So these industrial cows that are fed all this junk, for lack of better terms, hormones, antibiotics, grain, they're fatter and their meat is more tender?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it would be. If you you know, if you were a lion or a tiger or a bear, and there were a couple of guys that you were thinking about eating, and one of them was 6 feet tall and weighed 180 pounds. They could do a bunch of sit-ups and push-ups. And the other one was 6 feet tall and weighed 350 pounds. Which one do you think would be the most tender to eat?
I imagine the fatty guy.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about here. You're talking about eating a creature that is uh, unnaturally obese that would never occur in nature. You couldn't get a cow that fat on grass. You just couldn't.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. And what really boggles my mind is you're telling me that between the hormones, the antibiotics, the pesticides, the grain, that's cheaper than grass-fed. And it doesn't make sense. It almost sounds like it'd be more expensive.
Well, let me explain. You're right. Let me explain it to you. So, in that system, a lot of cost in the grain-fed beef system, many costs are spun off to outside vendors. The guy raising the cow and the guy buying the steak aren't covering those costs. You know, the organic matter on my farm is now 5%. When I was farming industrially, it was 0.5%. We had oxidized the organic matter in our soil, which meant that it would only absorb a 1/2 inch of rain, whereas today it will absorb a 5-inch rain. So
Gotcha.
those costs are cast aside. You know, there's a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. This is as big as the state of Massachusetts. And it occurred from, look it up, it occurred from the pesticides and chemical fertilizers washing down the Mississippi River that destroyed that what had previously been a great fishery. Now, the cost of that fishery was probably billions of dollars, the loss to feeding the planet. But the farmers that put the fertilizer and pesticides out won't pay that. And the grain company won't pay that. And the company that fed the cow won't pay that. It's spun off. We can talk about many costs that reduce the price of food at the checkout counter, but the cost is there. It's just that it's not being recognized by the perpetrator.
Okay, so you're telling me that in Mexico they used or overused pesticides so much that it killed this.
Not Mexico. I said the Gulf of Mexico.
Oh, the Gulf of Mexico. Thank you. Okay, so the Gulf of Mexico has this dead zone the size of Massachusetts.
Correct.
Okay, that's incredible.
Yeah, look it up. I mean, there's a lot been written about it.
That's incredible. All right, so
but that is a cost. That is a cost of modern farming, and that cost partially went to offset the price you pay at the checkout counter.
Gotcha. All right, here's something that surprised me. So when you started going down this road and going to this organic type of farming, you went to Zimbabwe. You went to this place called the Savory Institute. Talk about this.
So when I started transitioning my farm in the mid-90s, I was not the only guy in the country doing it. I didn't know any of the rest of them. I now know a few of them, but I was figuring it out myself. And by the early 2000s, I thought I had gotten really good at it. And by that time, we had formed a nonprofit called the American Grass-Fed Association, and I was the president of it.
Okay.
And we had an annual meeting in Denver and had a speaker. Our guest speaker, keynote speaker, was a guy named Alan Savory from Zimbabwe. And Alan was up to speak, And I was not particularly listening to him because I probably thought at the time I knew more about how to do this than anybody on the planet. Now, I didn't, but I thought I did. And Alan was speaking and I was listening to him, and he knew a lot of stuff I didn't know. And I was very impressed, and actually wound up going spending 3 weeks on his farm in Zimbabwe to take my holistic training. He came back and was one of the first savory hubs in this country. And I feel I owe a lot to Alan and the things I've learned from him through the years. Alan's still living. He's in his 90s.
Wow, that's incredible. First of all, it just blows me away that you didn't go to another organic farmer here in America. You went all the way to Africa to get your training. That to me tells me that you were 100% committed. You were all in. You're going to go to Africa and spend 3 weeks there learning how to do this new type of farming.
I was a man on a mission, and I would rather not have gone to Zimbabwe for that, but that was where you had to go to get it. I mean, there wasn't anybody in this country at that time that was at that level.
All right, so now that you've been doing this for the organic farming, you've been doing that for how long now?
About 30 years.
Okay, so you've been doing it for 30 years. And so when I bite into a grass-fed piece of beef, what is the difference? What should I be experiencing that I wouldn't experience with industrial beef?
Well, so when I talk about the attributes of grass-fed beef, I typically don't talk about the things that are so subjective or so easy to argue, like flavor, taste, those kinds of things. Who's to say what tastes better than what else? What I talk about is from a animal welfare perspective. My animals are far more compassionately handled than industrially raised cattle or hogs or sheep or goats or poultry. And the example I use is if we slaughter cattle at about 2 years old, maybe a little older than that. And if I had a cow that I was going to slaughter tomorrow, and I said, I'm going to give it a presidential pardon, just let it to continue to live here, the animal would live to be 20-something years old, because that's the life expectancy of a cow.
All right.
If I had a feedlot, and I used to have a feedlot, and I was feeding animals in confinement a very high carbohydrate grain diet, and I decided to give them a presidential pardon and keep them in the feedlot, they wouldn't live very long. They would die of all the health issues that happen from obesity and inactivity and eating a bad diet, an unhealthy diet.
Right.
So from animal welfare, that's where it is. From an environmental perspective, which is where it's most clear, I just told you that the organic matter on my farm is 5%. It'll absorb a 5-inch rainfall. Previously, it was 0.5%. It would only absorb a 1/2-inch rainfall.
That's incredible.
And and to take that step further, I think I read somewhere recently, and I was just looking at it, that half the species of plants and animals and microbes known to man, half of them are in some level of danger of extinction. Some level of danger of extinction. Now, I think that one of the most heinous acts humanity creates is driving any species, into extinction. I believe that every species in an ecosystem that naturally occurs in an ecosystem is there for a reason. Some of it we can see it and recognize. We can talk about that all day long. The symbiotic relationships that occur between when we talk about cattle and dung beetles and plants and microbes and symbiosis there. But I believe that every species that's naturally occurring in an ecosystem has a role to play. And when we drive it into extinction by using pesticides or whatever, then I think that's a crime against nature. We can talk about other things, but what we were talking about is the benefits of me moving this program. And the last one I'll throw out is the economic benefits. I am sitting right now in the middle of the town of Bluffton, Georgia.
Okay.
Bluffton was a thriving little farm town until World War II, and it had become a ghost town. 15 or 20 years ago, I started buying houses and storefronts and vacant lots, and we bought a lot of them. I don't know how many exactly. But today we've got 170 employees that make well over the county average, and this is a nice little town again. So what I'm telling you is that centralized, industrialized, commoditized agriculture impoverishes rural America. And the sort of farming we do here enriches rural America. And I think that we're well on our way to losing, that this is getting far out there, but I was born in 1954, and as a child, as a kid growing up, I longed to experience the wilderness.
Okay.
The Yukon or the Amazon or whatever. I'm today, 2024. There's not much wilderness left.
Right.
And so in my lifetime, in my 70 years, we pretty much destroyed the wilderness. And I think that in another lifetime, I won't see it, we'll destroy rural. There won't be any rural. The little rural towns will be impoverished or moved into something other than an agrarian economy. We'll make food in whatever kind of factory we make food in. And I think that we did humanity a great disservice when we annihilated wilderness. And I think we will do humanity an equally horrendous service if we annihilate rural.
Well, and to your point, the last, I want to say at least 5 years, it might be a decade now, but at least the last 4 or 5 years, we have several companies that are experimenting with laboratory grown meat.
Well, I mean, it's not just experimenting, they're marketing it.
Yeah, they're marketing. Yeah. I mean, the experiment's over. They're now doing it. You're right. Now they're marketing it and selling it. And
they have attracted billions of stockholder dollars.
Right.
Impossible meats, and there's a bunch of them out there.
Yeah.
They're not doing very well right now, but that doesn't mean that they won't, and it doesn't mean that manufactured food. I just read recently that there's a huge vegetable farm going in here in Georgia. It doesn't use sunlight and it doesn't use soil.
Hydroponics? Yeah.
Hydroponically grown under artificial light. So we're growing vegetables without soil or sunlight.
Right. And for them to have any kind of nutrients, they're going to add more chemicals. They're going to add something to those plants because they get certain nutritional value from being in the soil and in the sun.
Well, I think it's like, we don't like germs, we don't like microbes, but you don't want a sterile gut.
Right.
I'm of the impression, I've been told this before, that scientists can take seawater and analyze it and break it down and know exactly what's in it. But then if they try to build that seawater back, it won't support life. defense rest.
Right, right. Yeah, it's just amazing with our rush. You know, sometimes it's propelled by greed, but in our rush to do what we do, I think some people never stop to ask, why are we doing this? You know, every day, grocery stores throw away tons of food that are going bad, and which makes total sense. But at the same time, we have parts of America, we have citizens here that don't have enough to eat. And it seems to me that if you're a grocery store and you know that, hey, every day we're going to throw away a certain amount of food, couldn't we donate some of that instead of throwing it away on the day it expires, maybe a day or two before it expires, we could get into the hands of people. And they keep talking about this artificial food is going to help feed the starving people. But yet we already have the solution to feed people who don't have enough money. But back to your point, that doesn't create shareholder value. So it's not being done. Something simple isn't getting accomplished because there's no money in it.
Well, the earth has a carrying capacity, and I don't know what it is. And when I bring that up, what I hear is, well, I mean, we're wasting so much of the food that we're producing now that we must not be anywhere near the carrying capacity. But see, I don't think that's right. I think that the copious quantities of food that we're producing now are done in many cases through such onerous, destructive production practices that we're really not making as much, we're not producing as much food as we think we are. We are, but we're doing it on credit. I mean, what if we ran out of oil? I mean, and how much food are we going to have then? We don't make food out of oil, but a lot of oil goes into the production of food.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let me ask you this, because something that caught my attention on your website, White Oak Pastures is a zero waste farm. What does that mean?
So we own our own USDA inspected red meat slaughter plant and a USDA inspected poultry slaughter plant. And in the process of slaughtering animals, we generate about 9 tons a day of what's called packing plant waste. Very unattractive material. It is the eviscerate, the gut fill, the bones that are not marketable, heads, you know, it is just not pretty. But we compost that here on the farm. We incorporate that 9 tons of packing plant waste 5 days a week with a carbaceous material. That's a very nitrogenous material, meat scraps. And we incorporate it with a very carbaceous material, usually peanut shells or wood chips or whatever we have, and compost it. We aggressively compost it. We stir it. We got people hired to do that. And it takes about 6 weeks of, we check the temperatures every day to be sure it's composting properly oxygenated. When it's composted, we let it sit for a year. That allows it to become more fungal, less bacterial, which is better for the land. Then we apply it on the land, and it is incredible. It's like magic, microbe magic.
That's incredible. So from start to finish, it takes about a year, and then you use it as fertilizer at that point?
Correct. We 5 days a week, we add nitrogenous material to it, meat scraps, and we mix it every day to be sure it comes up to temperature. Keep records on it. Then we spread it. We let it sit for a year. You don't have to, but it's better fertilized if it sits for a year. More fungal.
Gotcha. All right, let me ask you this, because again, you kind of mentioned that the industrial type of farming is what you called a monoculture farm, and really, white oak pastures is a multicultural type farm, right? I mean, you guys have multiple things growing simultaneously.
Correct. One of the, I think that one of the worst things that we've done with modern farming is to create these huge monocultures. Monocultures don't exist in nature. Nature abhors a monoculture. If you think of any ecosystem you know of, whether it's mountain, desert, valley, plateau, polar, there's a lot of different plants and animals and microbes living in symbiotic relationships with each other. No two ecosystems are exactly the same, but they all involve plants and animals and microbes in symbiotic relationships with each other. And that we have gone, and it's very cyclical. And post-World War II, we have changed that to make it very linear. So we raise, cows in the cow pasture, corn in the cornfield, soybeans in the soybean field, wheat in the wheat field. And if something is growing there that's not the crop, we kill it. We use a side. Side means kill, homicide, right?
Yep, homicide, pesticide, yeah.
Insecticide, nematicide, fungicide, side. So well, that's what we do. And when I was an industrial cattle farmer, every single day of my life, I went to the pasture and looked for something to kill, literally, actively.
Right.
I looked for an insect or a microbe or another plant species or something to kill. And I could find it. I was good at that. And I would find a side. I knew what side to put on it. And what I didn't realize is when I killed that, what I perceived to be a pest that day, the pesticide was very efficacious. It would kill it well, but it killed some other stuff too.
Sure, sure.
And there would be another reaction to that. So I have to put out another one. And it was highly efficacious, but it killed some other stuff, so I'd have to put out another one. It's a cycle, chain, just goes on and on and on forever. And big companies make a tremendous amount of money selling those sides, and farmers spend a lot of money buying and applying those sides, and they always have unintended consequences that adversely affects the land or the animal or the people on the land or whatever. So, what we do now is very, very different. And it's not all sweetness and light. Our return on investment is not something I lift up with pride. But I tell you this, I'm the fourth generation on this farm, and two of my three daughters came back to the farm with their spouses, and they wouldn't have if I farmed the way I did when they were growing up. And they've got 5 babies that could come back to the farm. And I'm not saying the farm's going to go 10 generations. That's not the way it happens.
Right.
But it's gone 5 and probably will go 6.
And the fact that your grandkids are hanging out with you and your kids came back, I mean, that to me is a win. It's priceless.
Matter of fact, they just left. They left. I said, I gotta make a call. Get out of here.
Yeah, let me tell you, there's something special about having grandkids, and man, I think that to me is a win. And it's good to have your kids back. That's also a win. So that to me sounds great. So let me ask you this, and I don't know.
Let me say one thing about that. But the way we run our business, it's a real failure if a generation doesn't come back, because I mentioned this earlier, we make investments in land and herds and infrastructure that don't pay back based on quarter or the annual report. They're long-term investments. So when we make investments here, they're truly generational. And we know they're not going to pay for themselves in the next X months or X years. It's going to take X generations.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's, having that long-term mindset is what you need and when you're trying to accomplish any big goal. So I think that says a lot.
I think it's a lot of what's wrong with what we're doing today. I took business courses when I was at the University of Georgia in the 70s. I mean, a long time ago, but some things hadn't changed. And, it was all about return on investment. And when you go to the bank to borrow money, it's a 5-year amortization or 20-year, if it's land, maybe 20 years. But there's almost no consideration for generational payment.
Right. Yeah, it's strictly a numbers what they're looking at. And so I wanted to ask you this. So back when you were doing the industrial farming, to get a cow from calf to slaughter, how long would it take, and what would it cost you versus today?
Time-wise, you're talking about well under 2 years industrially and well over 2 years the way we do it today. Cost, things change so much. The actual cost of raising that cow to 12 or 1,400 pounds over a 18-month period of time would be significantly less than what it takes today. And you're talking about 20 years ago. You're asking me time, use of money, and I'm a farmer. But what we do here is the food I produce is more expensive than industrially produced food. I'm sorry about that, but I'm unapologetic about it. I mean, I hate it. I wish I'd say my food is better. It's better for the environment, and it's cheaper.
Right.
And it'll grow hair on mine and your head.
Man, that would be awesome.
Yeah, but the fact is, it is probably healthier, probably costs more, certainly better for the environment, certainly better for the welfare of the animal. We slaughter the animal now. Make no mistake, unapologetically, we slaughter the animal. But the animal lived a much better life than it would have otherwise.
Right.
I can on other attributes, less polluting.
I mean, I had family members who still run a dairy farm, and I remember he took me, this family member, I'm sorry, took me and walked me through the dairy farm, and he was the father, and so I was friends with his son, and he gave me the tour. And after walking through that dairy farm, I stopped consuming dairy altogether. It was just, he's talking about all the different hormones and the pus and this and that, and and how these animals are milked every day, and because they're milked every day, sometimes blood and all this stuff gets in the milk, and it has to be burned off, and blah blah blah, and they're fed the same way as in that industrial method, and then they have no roaming. There's no grazing. There's no roaming. You wouldn't want to live the way these cows are being treated.
Well, and that's what we hadn't talked about is the animal welfare component. I tell them that cows were born to roam and graze. Pigs were born to root and wallow. Chickens were born to scratch and peck. But in the industrial model, that does not happen. Not in the confinement model, which is the way industrial food is produced. Those instinctive behaviors are not available. And it's like if you took your kid and said, I'm going to keep you in a closet, but the closet's going to be 72 degrees. I'm going to leave the light on. I'm going to leave a mattress in there for you, and you'll never get run over by a truck, and the bully will never beat you up, and whatever else. But that's not, the kid can't express instinctive behavior.
Right.
And in the industrial animal production model, they can't express instinctive behavior.
Yeah, that's incredible. And, and again, it's like a lot of things in life. I'm sure that this industrial model at one point served a really great purpose. And I guess you can argue that it still does, because we do have millions of people that are eating and need to be fed and all that other stuff. But it seems like if we would have, if we go back to the organic model like you guys do there, then yeah, our food cost is going to go up, but at the same time, our environment is safer. The meat is healthier. It just seems like when you look at some of this marketing that goes on today, where they talk about, hey, if you buy our beef or our chickens, we promise you no antibiotics, and they've been grass fed and this and blah blah blah, and people seem to be willing to pay the extra dollars for the better option.
Well, and that's a conundrum. I don't blaspheme industrial farming. I'm opposed to it. I used to do it and I quit. I went to a lot of trouble, a lot of expense to not do it anymore. But I'm not overtly critical of those that do it now, because there's still hungry people on the planet. And admittedly, the way I produce food costs more. And all those hungry people, I want them to have something to eat. I wish they had something to eat that was raised the way we raise it. But if they can't get that, I want them to have something. So I try not to be too judgmental about exactly who does what. I don't know that. I know what I want to do.
Right.
I know that from the perspective of my animals, my land, my family, my community, my customers, we're better off for me doing this the way I do it.
Right. And ultimately, that's the most important thing, is that you can look in the mirror and say, I am proud of what I'm doing. And ultimately, that's what it is. So when you made this switch, real quick, Will, when you started switching from industrial to organic, regenerative type farming, were there any governmental issues that tried to stop you, or anything like that might have caused you to slow down or roadblocked you?
It would be overstated to say roadblock, but there are difficulties there. Processing was hard. To market meat, it's got to be slaughtered at a USDA inspected plant. And there simply aren't many in this country available to farmers like me. They're the huge ones that the big meat companies own, but there just aren't a lot available. So I had to borrow millions of dollars to build processing, which was very frightening. But,
Yeah.
But not there are no rules against doing what I did. No, it's not, the deck is not stacked in my favor. The big multinational food companies have a lot of sway with the regulations and how they're written and how they're administered. But anyone can do it. It just takes a little money and a lot of determination.
Yeah, it sounds like it takes a lot of money. If you're talking about millions of dollars and you're trying to build these slaughter facilities, and yeah.
Yeah, it did. I hope everybody doesn't have to do that.
Right.
I was a very early innovator in this field, and I simply had nowhere to get my animals slaughtered. I just didn't.
Right.
I either had to do it or not do it or not do it. So I did it.
So
Today
before, oh, go ahead.
Today there's a little more capacity, and hopefully there'll be more going in. I hope that uh, I hope that every farmer doesn't have to do what we did in terms of being a complete vertically integrated outfit. You know, we do our own slaughter, we do our own order fulfillment online. We do all those things, but because we went into it 30 years ago when it was either do it yourself or it's not going to get done.
Right. And real quick, I want to do a shout out here. So people, if they want to order online or check out your facility or your team, they can simply go to whiteoakpastures.com, whiteoakpastures.com, and they can find out all about you, plus order online. And I think that that's incredible that here you are in Bluffton, Georgia, and you're shipping all over the world, or at least all over America. That's just an incredible thing that we're able to do that now.
Well, and I'll also invite them along with that is to come to see us. We built a store, a general store, and a restaurant and lodging, and we've got a number of things going on here. We founded a 501c3 nonprofit called CFAR, Center for Agricultural Finance, and we have sessions to train farmers on how we do what we do.
Right. Man, that's incredible that you're now teaching people. So, okay, so before you made the switch to this organic regenerative type farming, when you were doing the industrial farming, where did you get your animals slaughtered at that point? Did you just put them in a big train box and ship them?
No, there were a small number of very small slaughter plants around here that would do it for me, and they literally would sell me their excess capacity.
Gotcha.
It wasn't enough for me to make a living on. We were so lucky. Oh, we were just incredibly lucky. And we started this in the late 90s. I was ready to have product to sell by the early 2000s. And that's when grass-fed beef first came on the scene.
Right.
We were just so lucky. I didn't see that coming. It just showed up. And I would take my animals to these locally owned, very small slaughter plants, and I got knew all the owners, and I'd say, "How many can I bring this week?" They'd say 3. I said, "I need to bring 10." I said, 3. And I could not run my business on the amount of slaughter they had available to me. And so we went on the limb. I was blessed. I'd inherited a nice paid for farm. I never borrowed any money. And I went to the bank and borrowed a lot of money and built a packing plant. It was just very fortunate, again, with the timing. I tell you, I'm gonna shamelessly plug this, but I wrote a book, and it's called A Bold Return to Giving a Damn. And
wow.
It's got that history in it. If anybody's interested, I would offer that up.
Okay. All right. And is it available at your website, or is it also available on Amazon?
Both.
Okay, great. What is it again?
A bold return to giving a damn.
A bold return to giving a damn. That's an excellent title. I love it. Well, Will, it's been an amazing pleasure to have you on the show, and I am excited for you and your family that you guys are changing the world. At least in your corner of the world, you're making an impact. You put people to work. You revitalize a town. You've changed your farm, and that's an incredible thing. And I'm just blown away that you did this basically contrary to what everybody else was doing. So that just takes a lot of courage. You mentioned the millions of dollars that you borrowed. That takes courage. It's incredible. So thank you for stopping by, and congratulations for what's going on there at your farm.
I think a lot of what you're mistaking for courage is naivety, but I'll take it.
Well, what's the old saying? Ignorance is bliss, right? A lot of the things that we do is because we're naive. We don't know any better, and that works.
And I lead a blissful life.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by. It's been a blast getting to know you.
Thank you for having us, Bert. I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.